Today I'll be presenting on mental toughness, building resilience. My name is Sean Van Horsen, and today we're just going to go over what resilience is, the research behind how it's built, its effectiveness in sport and in general life, and then a new theory on how to build resilience and how to further it based off of the research that I have read. So what is resilience? Resilience is the very definition of it, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughnesses. The ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity. So from those two definitions, you can kind of see it's just how well you recover from a hard time, hardship, or adversity, and your ability to return back to your normal shape or your normal self being a human. Psychological resilience is a little bit different of a definition, but kind of the same idea. These are pulled from two different articles, so these are two different definitions, whereas the resilience in itself definitions were pulled straight from the dictionary. These two, the first one is from Detart and Stevens, 2014, the ability to mentally or emotionally cope with a crisis or to return to pre-crisis status quickly. So two different things there, either to cope well or to return to pre-status crisis in a timely fashion. The second definition I chose for psychological resilience was Robertson, Cooper, Sarkar, and Karan, 2015. Resilience exists when a person uses mental processes, the behaviors in promoting personal assets and protecting self from the potential negative effects of stressors. I particularly like this definition because it mentions mental processes and behaviors and allows the person to exercise free thought and exercise doing actions that help cope with their emotional status and their mental status as well from the negative stressors. So now that we know what resilience is, we're going to talk about what individual resilience is versus team resilience. So individual resilience is developed over time, and it's used to protect one's own well-being. The individual's ability to bounce back from stressors, trauma, or events that may affect the psyche negatively, kind of what we talked about, the normal definition of resilience. Attributes to resiliency, according to the APA article about resilience, the capacity to make realistic plans and take the steps to carry them out. So that would be basically goal setting and following through with those goals. Positive view of yourself and confidence in your strengths and abilities. This is a key thing coming up in what we'll talk about. So remember confidence and positive view of yourself. Skills in communication and problem solving. I think this makes a lot of sense because when you are in a pickle or a tough situation, having the ability to problem solve and having the ability to communicate that tough situation to yourself and others is a very valuable skill to have. And the capacity to manage strong feelings and impulses. This, again, is kind of just keeping yourself in check, making sure that you're coping correctly with the circumstances, not making the circumstances worse for yourself or others helping you. Now that we know what individual resilience is, let's talk about team resilience. Team resilience, there are four things in common to teams that are resilient. Again, this was pulled from a APA article, 2014, on their website. They believe they can complete the task together effectively. I included some examples here. So the example here would be in the Super Bowl when the Patriots were down 28 to 3 or 28 to 10. They were believed to have been lost out of the game. It was actually 28 to 3 at halftime, and they ended up winning 31 to 28. But Bill Belichick, and when they were down by 18 points, he said, "We were confident that we could still make the plays that we needed to make to win." Basically meaning that the whole team believed that they could still overcome this adverse situation, and they ended up doing it. 2, share a common mental model of teamwork. This is very important. Team members that understand their roles, understand how to interact with each other in healthy ways, and have an order that they follow as a team is very important. And what I mean by that is if a team has a set of rules and one or two of the players aren't following it, it's kind of insidious, and the players will start to kind of drift from those rules, especially if a leader figure or someone who is important on the team stops following those rules. So teams with order tend to do better with resiliency than teams without order. Teams without order lose resiliency due to the weak components becoming lost, and that drives into a negative team culture, which is never a good thing. Number 3, the ability to improvise. This is, again, just kind of a common sense with resilience. When you get put in a bad situation, you have to overcome and adapt. Something that I thought about when I read this was, as the going gets tough, the tough get going. If you can't get going when stuff gets tough, then things are just going to stay tough and remain tough for you. So if things get tough, you better get tough as well, and you better be able to get the work going. That goes for team as well. So if your team is in a bad situation, say you're on a 4-game losing streak, what's the only way out of a losing streak? It's to get a win. So when you're in a tough situation, you just got to pull it out. Number 4, trust. Trust is very important as it comes to team resilience. Having a team psychological safety zone, so trusting your teammates even with critique, even with things that you need to work on, so asking them things that you're bad at and what you can work on, trusting that they'll tell you the truth and not just be like, oh, you're fine, you're doing good. Having the trust in someone to give you a straight answer and not be afraid of being ostracized. Constructive criticism is a big deal for building resilience, and being able to take that criticism is a huge deal as well. So we're going to talk about the benefits of resilience now. The benefits, according to the APA article and other articles that I had read, the ability to navigate hardships become easier. This is because of previous experience with resilience. In building that resilience, you kind of look back and reflect on what you've done, and then it just builds, and you're able to see, okay, I've overcame that situation, so I should be able to overcome this one. The ability to manage emotions caused by major trauma. Again, this is kind of flashing back into the past, realizing maybe how to manage the emotions that you're having better, or the same way that you did when it was effective in the past. For example, if you got in a car crash and you blew up on your mom on the phone talking to her, that would be a poor management of emotions. Whereas if you got in a car crash again, like 5-10 years down the road, and you're talking to your mom on the phone, you would know better not to blow up on her and to keep those emotions in check and not make things any worse for yourself. The capability to take a situation on hand and turn it into something manageable. This is very, very important for resilience, and it's a great benefit. So when things get tough unexpectedly, so say you're in the middle of a soccer game and you're playing defense and their best forward has the ball, they're coming at you. You know that they are more skilled than you are, but you have to figure out a way how to manage this, even just to give your team a chance, so you don't leave your goalie on a 1-on-0 breakaway. So being able to manage that situation is something that would be considered being resilient and is a benefit of being resilient. Quicker adaptations to problem solving. This is just a side effect of resilience. It is something that is almost truly what resilience is. It's being able to problem solve in a timely fashion and to problem solve well. So there's a difference between doing something fast and doing something well. When you're able to do both, then you got yourself quite the resilient person, especially if they're in a bad situation. And another benefit of resilience would be goal setting. Whether they know it or not, they're setting goals in a negative situation. So out of a negative situation, you're either going to keep sinking, but once you set that first goal, you're going to start reaching towards that goal. That's the first steps to getting out of that bad situation. So that is a great benefit of resilience. we're going to talk about how to build resilience here. This was taken out of a couple different articles, mainly the APA article on resilience 2014. Make relationships. This helps to have someone to talk to and to vent to and manage those emotions with. Accept change and have a positive outlook on it. This is important to that positive outlook part. Again, we'll talk about that later. Accepting the change is just realizing, hey, I can't change anything. I'm in this situation. Let's move forward. Let's get out of it. Setting goals and moving towards them. I talked about that on the last slide briefly. Take action on difficult situations, even when you don't want to. This is kind of goes hand in hand with that second one, accepting change and having a positive outlook. If you don't accept that change and you don't take action, you're just going to sit in that hole, in that difficult situation. So taking action is very important, even when it doesn't seem like you have anywhere to go. Seeking opportunity for self-discovery. Again, I think this is an important one. Being able to find out who you really are in these tough situations and see what you're really made of. Using these situations as a learning experience is beneficial for not only an athlete, but for everyday life sort of person. Maintaining optimism goes hand in hand with that positive outlook. Self-care, it's just always important to make sure that you're mentally and physically aware of how you're feeling and what's going on within your own body. And a good way to use that self-care is to keep a journal. Keeping a journal helps you track all the things that you've been through and all the things that you may go through moving forward. It also helps you track how you felt in those situations and what you did, the behaviors that came from those feelings and thoughts. Learning from your past is another big way to build resilience. If you don't learn from your past, you're just going to find yourself in these situations over and over and be lost. The more we understand how we got out of these bad situations in the past, the better we can further our problem-solving abilities in the future, and the quicker we can get ourselves out of these bad situations effectively. So situations of adversity. So here's the current model of resilience that I found that is being used to build resilience and to approach resilience. So 4 central themes were built. Resilience in an individual. This is Smith and Werner 2001 study. An active approach towards problem solving. A tendency to perceive experiences in a positive light even when they were suffering. The ability to gain other people's positive attention. And a strong reliance on faith to maintain a positive light view. When I look at those 4 themes, I see 3 things that point to perception and positivity. So a tendency to perceive experiences in a positive light, right? That's how well you can make good out of bad, essentially. The ability to gain other people's positive attention is communication with other people, gaining their attention, not out of desperation, but out of love and kindness and genuine help. And a strong reliance on faith to maintain a positive life view. This one was interesting to me. I think having a belief system, whether that be a belief in religion, Christianity, or spirituality, is important and can help drive that positive life view. The other one, active approach towards problem solving. Again, that's kind of what I was saying is don't get stuck in that rut, at least make some sort of move forward. 8 factors were identified. This was also in that Smith and Werner, but they got the 8 factors out of the Comfort and Hopkins study. The 8 factors that were identified to create these themes, these were themes that they asked athletes about, how they were resilient. Optimism, empathy, insight, intellectual competence, self-esteem, direction or mission, and determination and perseverance. These themes make sense to me. Direction is good, self-esteem, intellectual competence. Those 3 right there kind of make up a lot of what you need when you're in a situation where you need resilience. Empathy is great to have when somebody else is in a position and you need to help them. It's also great to have when you're in a position of adversity, because you can realize, hey, this is pretty bad, but it could be worse. What about this, right? So that goes hand in hand with the optimism. Determination, perseverance, I think those are pretty straightforward. Factors of the compensatory model defined. So these are the 8 factors that were listed. I just found the dictionary definitions of them and put them there. Optimism, hopefulness, and confidence about the future of successful outcome of something. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Insight, the capacity to gain an accurate and deep intuitive understanding of a person or thing. Intellectual competence, an overarching construct comprising cognitive and non-cognitive traits based on the identification of empirically observable individual differences leading to difference in future achievement. Self-esteem, confidence in one's own worth or abilities, self-respect. Direction or mission, the management or guidance of something. Determination, firmness of purpose, resoluteness. Perseverance, persistence in doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. There's a couple of those I would like to pick out of there and kind of go over deeper. One being self-esteem, confidence in one's own worth and abilities. Even when you're in a bad place, it's great to have self-esteem, especially for building resilience, because if you believe in your own worth and you believe in yourself, you're going to be in a lot better place than if you're just down in the dumps and not believing in that anything you do can help. That direction or that mission, again, we touched on this, just moving forward, having a base plan, setting those goals, and just doing it leads into that determination. Just knowing that you're going to get out of that hole eventually, and perseverance, doing it even though you don't want to. So those bottom 4 right there, I think, are the most important ones as it comes to resilience. Let's connect this back to sports. A couple different studies I found: Explanatory Style of Resilience After Sports Failure, Martin Crum et al. This basically reviewed a pessimistic explanation of a basketball drill versus an optimistic explanation of a basketball drill, and it showed that athletes who looked back on their hardships in a negative way actually performed worse in resiliency than people who look back on those hardships in a positive or neutral way. So if they said it was a good experience even though they did bad, or they said it was an indifferent experience, they actually were shown to be more resilient than people who had a negative outlook on that. Defining the characterizing team resilience in elite sports. Morgan, Fletcher, and Sakar. Those names are going to come up quite a bit. Fletcher and Sakar defined team resilience in this study. They defined it as team resilience was defined as dynamics psychosocial process which protects a group of individuals from the potential negative effects of the stressors they collectively encounter. It comprises of processes whereby team members use their individual and combined resources to positively adapt when experiencing adversity. The 4 main groups they found to make that definition were group structure, mastery approaches, social capital, and collective efficacy. Another study done by Fletcher and Sakar, a grounded theory of psychological resilience in Olympic champions. This study showed that positive personality, motivation, focus, and confidence helped protect Olympic athletes from negative stressors. So when Olympic athletes performed poorly, things that helped them bounce back, according to interviews from 10 Olympic champions, was a optimistic outlook, motivation to achieve at a very high level, focus on what is important to them, which was being part of the Olympics, and confidence in themselves. More research here. Excuse me. Bouncing back from adversity, athletes' experience of resilience. This is Galli and Vili, 2008. This study suggests that resilience is a side effect of personal growth, which I thought was very interesting. It suggested that resilience came from review of personal growth, and also suggested that having that resilience can prevent an athlete from burning out over time. And this is because they can realize and appreciate a little bit more the success that they're having in their sport when they know that they've had bad times and they know that they've gotten out of those bad times. Psychological resilience in sports performers, a review of stressors and protective factors. Fletcher and Sakar, again, 2014. This was a review of things that cause resilience in athletes and things that they use to protect themselves, cause stress in athletes, and things that they use to protect themselves. Common stressors that they found were competition-based, organization-based, so that's the team or organization they were playing for, and non-sporting, general life-based. 5 factors that were identified as protective, so these would be the resiliency factors. It was a positive personality, motivation, confidence, focus, and perceived social support. So if we looked back a slide before, it actually adds that social support from the previous study they did the year prior. The other 4 factors, positive personality, motivation, confidence, and focus, were all the same. So this is my new theory moving forward with resilience. After reviewing the research, common themes emerged. This is what I was kind of pointing out throughout the presentation. Confidence, personal growth, and positive outlook kept popping up in the research as words that were important as it comes to resilience. So this is my theory as far as resilience. It's circular driven, so it just repeats itself. A positive outlook on negative stressors leads to building of self-confidence, which leads to personal psychological growth, which leads to a building of resilience, which leads to a positive outlook on negative stressors, so on and so forth until the end of time. Unless something breaks that cycle, so say for example you have a negative outlook on negative stressors, that cycle will continue until it can't continue anymore, until you no longer have any negative stressors. So how to implement this new theory? I propose a 5-step process. Step 1, find optimism. So have your client or clients set goals to encourage positive growth. So whether that be performance goals, outcome goals, process goals, team goals, anything like that. Anything that can get the people motivated, fired up, and optimistic about seeking those goals and encouraging positive growth. That'd be great. Step 2, overcome adversity. So when an adverse situation comes, having the optimism to overcome it. Step 3, recognize self-achievement. So recognize that the client has gotten out of, having them recognize themselves that they've gotten out of a hole and done it by themselves and have had social support and all that stuff. And just really letting them know that, hey, you did it. You did this. This was you. And step 4, persevere through hardships. So this is just continuing to push through any residual hardships that come from that adversity, because when it rains it pours often. So continuing to persevere. And step 5 is to reflect on your experience of coming out of that hole. In conclusion, resilience is a topic that is fairly well studied in sports, but not fully understood. There's a lot of different theories out there, and there's a lot of theories that are very similar. I pointed out a few of them that I really liked. The current theories have very common themes, which is why I decided I wanted to make my own theory and my model on how to promote that theory. The Van Horsen model would combine multiple theories about resilience and kind of combine them into one comprehensive model.